Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Growing Kentucky's Leaders. I'm one of your hosts, Sheldon McKinney.
And I'm your other host, Ruth Ann Fink.
And today we have an awesome guest that I know you are going to love. Kyle Kelly is a Kentucky FFA Foundation board member. He's been doing this good work of FFA with us for a long time. He's an incredible advocate for Kentucky farm families in Kentucky and on the national stage. He's had a fantastic career that we're going to talk about today. And currently, he works for Kentucky Farm Bureau as the director of the Public Affairs Division. Welcome, Kyle.
Oh, thanks, Sheldon. Glad to be on today.
Yeah. So, Kyle, you have such an important job and you do a great job at it. And I think we're going to start really at the top with what you do. Tell our listeners, what does the director of the Public Affairs Division for Kentucky Farm Bureau do?
So I think I have the best job in the world. I'm pretty biased about that, but I am very passionate about agriculture and advocacy. And I think Kentucky Farm Bureau, we're the voice of agriculture here in Kentucky. But we also have one of the largest, and I would argue one of the strongest farm bureaus in the nation too. So as director of Public Affairs Division, I really get to oversee our lobbying efforts. So our membership, that grassroots engagement, they determine our policies, like what we are for, what we are against. But I really get to lead the charge of trying to get those things passed or not, not to pass if we're in opposition to it. So at the local, state, and national level, as the director, I get to kind of lead the charge at all three levels. And then we do have a director of national affairs, Erica King. She is a good Farm Bureau member, had worked in DC and was ready to get back to the countryside. So we were able to get her into Kentucky, and she really kind of leads the charge at the national level, but I get to oversee that. And then at the state level, lead our advocacy efforts as well, and really have that grassroots engagement. So I get to be in Frankfort every day, talking to the legislators, educating them, updating them. But ultimately, what's most fun about my job is I can put that call to action out. And we have 485,000 farm family members. They receive that call to action, and then they go to work on their behalf and to help make our lobbying effort successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get to work with a lot of different people. The membership of Kentucky Farm Bureau is a really diverse group. I think it's important for our listeners to know just kind of your personal story of what led you or inspired you to this career in public policy, specifically around agriculture.
Yeah, well, Ruth Ann, first of all, shout out to you, the winner of the discussion meet, or Kentucky Farm Bureau discussion meet. So that's a big deal. That was something I could never do. So I was runner up twice, never could win. It's very competitive, but honestly, so grew up on a family farm in Owen County. I still live there. We were cattle, hay, and tobacco farm, and that's one of the things I'm most proud of is that we're still all of those things. So I have some cows, and I get to manage the pasture, manage the hay. I do lease the tobacco ground now, but it does mean a lot to me that I still do have anywhere from 10 to 15 acres of tobacco that a longtime farmer there in Owen County leases that. So do still have that base, but it was growing up on that family farm that really made me realize that one, I wanted to be on the farm. I wanted to farm, but I also realized the need for advocacy. I realized all my teachers, Sheldon, they said I probably talked too much, which my grandfather was a Baptist preacher, so I think it just ran in the family to talk a lot. But so I did talk a lot and realized that I guess I kind of had I don't know if gift's the right word, but I guess I had the ability to speak and to talk, and had FFA advisors that always encouraged me to do speaking competitions. Never won those at any national or state level either, Sheldon. They're obviously very competitive, but I did get the opportunity to do public speaking through FFA, and Daniel Bussell was my ag teacher. Great teacher. And that's really where I started to look into speeches around advocacy and policy. And so it really was kind of one, just growing up on the farm and seeing the need, but then also having that opportunity at a young age to give speeches to adults and to my peers. And then ultimately through Farm Bureau, the first was the outstanding youth contest, just a prepared 2-minute speech, but then ultimately the discussion meet where you are debating, discussing, whatever phrase you want to use, with your peers on ag policy issues. So it was really FFA and then Kentucky Farm Bureau that gave me the opportunity to do it and make me realize that was something that I wanted to do and something that I thought I was decently good at. Never the best, never won, but was able to do that competitively. So that's kind of my background in getting there, Ruth Ann.
No, I think that's great. And I wanted to shout this out because you mentioned it a few times. You were like, I did all of these things and I participated in all the contests that were available, whether it's through Kentucky Farm Bureau or it was through FFA. And I think it's okay for our students to hear that it's okay to not win every single time, but that you're showing up and you did it. I also never won a state speaking contest
never
or
won.
national, and that's okay. Like, we're all very happy in our careers and are making a difference in Kentucky agriculture in very different ways. And so if we have students listening today that are FFA members, I just want them to hear that obviously competing and trying your best is important, and we want them to do that. But it's okay. Like, they can still have long-term success and career success in life if they are not the winner at the end of the day. So I just wanted to call that out because I also relate to man, I tried and tried and tried again. And when it came to contests, was not very successful at winning. It is so competitive. But I think that's a great thing for our students to hear. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, it's extremely competitive. I mean, I would argue that FFA competitions are the most competitive thing you can engage in. Everybody is so good at what they do. So I get the opportunity to give some speeches different places and in policy, and I know we'll get into some policy things, but it's rare that you pass a bill the first year that the idea comes up. It takes a lot of time to educate uh, people on the subject matter and to get public opinion and to get things passed. So when I give updates and things, if a bill's not moving this session or not moving as fast as we might want it, I give a speech about what like failing and a failure. Like, you can't be afraid to fail. Like, if you fail and you try again, you can eventually see success. Like, a failure is if you fail and never try again. So I do think you're spot on. Like, don't let not winning the first time or not getting something done right away deter you from trying to achieve that goal. And you can look back in history, and I mean, you see policy discussions that's been going on for 40 years that are still relevant today. And in the policy space in particular, like, if you don't get it done the first year, don't give up.
Yeah. It's the work that matters. It's the work that moves us forward as individuals and competing and in work and in policy discussions. I love that you said your teachers talk too much. Just a big shout out on any report card I ever had. It was always like talks too much, like many underlines. And it didn't matter who you sat me beside, like, I'm gonna talk to him. And I really think, I hope we're better now at, instead of shutting that down, calling out those gifts of being a good communicator and a good connector of people, because all three of us have jobs that are built on connecting with other people and advocating through talking. And so shout out to all the people who said talks too much on your report card.
Yeah, that's right. And those teachers were some of my favorite ones, and I'm still friends with today. But yeah, they had the same marks in all caps. Went home, and my parents were basically like, "Tell us something we didn't know."
Yeah, yeah. We
Justice
also
for the yappers.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a yapper too that I'm raising. I get it. So, how we are entering a legislative season right now, and I want you to kind of give a preview to our students of issues that you're watching, that you're working on, that they should be mindful of. And, maybe tell us, like, we're not in legislative season all the time. And so how does your work really gear up to focus right now?
So we are about to be in probably the busiest time is during session. So the General Assembly will gavel in. It's a odd year, so we're in a short session, which is a 30-day legislative session. Now it's 30 legislative days, but it occurs from January until March 30th. So per the Constitution, which was changed around the year 2000. We used to not have session at all during the odd years, but around 2000, there was a constitutional amendment that passed that did do annual sessions. So every even year is a 60-day budget session. And in the odd years, like 2025, it is a short session that has to end by March 30th. It's mandated in the Constitution. It ends by the end of March. So we'll kick off January 7th. It's the first Tuesday after the first Monday of the new year. That's how it's written. So every year it's a different day, but it is that first Tuesday after the first Monday. And this year it's January 7th. We'll be in for 4 days, and then we will gavel out for the remainder of January and come back in February to really get started. So that first week is electing leadership amongst each chamber, the House and the Senate. They will also appoint all of their committees. So like the Agriculture Committee, Local Government Committee, Appropriations and Revenue Committee, multiple others. They will officially appoint that. And then this year, the House is likely to pass one bill in those first 4 days around lowering the state income tax from 4 to 3.5%. They're likely to do that first week. But the majority, the bulk of the stuff will happen when we come back in February and we stay in continuously through March 30th. Some of the issues in particular that we're going to be watching this year, the number one issue is around farmland preservation. In 2019, we passed legislation called the Selling Farmer Tax Credit. What that bill did in 2019, if you sell your farm to a beginning farmer, which is defined in the law, anyone with less than 10 years experience of ownership of a farm, you'd be eligible for a tax credit. Well, 5 years later, we've noticed that program's not being fully utilized.
Okay.
And part of that is just how difficult it is for farmers with less than 10 years experience to purchase land. So we've heard from our membership throughout the year that program should be open to all active farmers, because our goal is to keep that land in production agriculture. And we don't want to see it developed. We want that to remain in agriculture. It's essential that it does. So we want to open that program up to all active farmers and then give a bonus credit if you do sell to a beginning. So still give an extra incentive, because we do need beginning farmers in production. We know that. There's many other programs we support specific to beginning farmers, young and beginning. And so we do want to keep this tax credit open, give a bonus incentive if it's to a beginning, but allow all active farmers to participate, with the goal being twofold, really. One, keeping that land in production agriculture and having access to farmers to purchase it rather than a developer. And hopefully the second goal is on the back end, if we're able to buy farms at lower cost or at market cost, and we're able to farm profitably, hopefully that will stem the tide of some of the prices you're seeing at grocery stores, and see some more direct farm sales or profitability on the farm. So hopefully, if you're able to stop just the rising cost of farmland and production in general, hopefully that'll slow the cost of food increases, because the farmer's not getting rich here. The prices are going up, but the farmer's not becoming more profitable. And that's our goal. We want the farmer to be more profitable. We want the consumers to have a safe and abundant and affordable food supply. So that's that is our number one issue going into next session.
Yeah, that's a great issue to be talking about. I know there's probably many priorities for Kentucky Farm Bureau that you're going to be working on this spring and in all of 2025. We look forward to hearing about some of those changes along the way, so keep us updated. We want to know. Mark your calendars for Give FFA Day 2025.
This February 20th, we are celebrating the 10th Give FFA Day. This is a day focused on giving back to Kentucky FFA so that its members can continue to build communities, grow leaders, and strengthen agriculture. With your help, Kentucky FFA members can have a once-in-a-lifetime experience with no financial burden.
Your gift on Give FFA Day matters. FFA members are able to expand their SAE projects, attend leadership training events, participate in contests, and even wear their very own blue corduroy jacket.
If you believe in the mission of FFA, we ask that you give enthusiastically on February 20th at kyffa.org.
Interested in doing more? We'd love to have you as a Give FFA Day ambassador. Simply sign up through our weekly newsletter. You can make sure you're receiving this newsletter by clicking the link in our show notes. We will see you and your gift on February 20th. I think it's important for our listeners to hear, especially our students to hear, if they think of Kentucky Farm Bureau as an insurance company, they may be wondering, like, why is all this public policy and legislative work such a priority for this organization? And so I just want you to speak to that some, Kyle, today as we're talking. Just why is this such a priority for Kentucky Farm Bureau?
So that is a great point, Ruth Ann. We insurance is kind of what we're known for
Yeah.
across Kentucky, but when you look at Kentucky Farm Bureau, we were founded in 1919 by farmers as a grassroots advocacy group, more or less. So we are a nonprofit who I work for, Kentucky Farm Bureau Federation. We were established, like I said, 1919 to be the voice of agriculture and lobby Congress, lobby the state General Assembly, lobby local elected officials on agricultural policy. But we were always founded not just to advocate, but to help farmers however we could. So you fast forward into the 1940s, and one of the major issues were getting insurance on our farms. Obviously, farms are extremely risky to insure, and not just the crops, but the structures, the equipment, these hillsides we farm on. I mean, just the business in general. So we were seeing difficulties back in the 40s. Now that was before our time, but I'm so thankful that those that were in leadership back in the 40s saw the need to create a insurance company to help farmers. So it was sometime in the 40s, 43, I believe, 43 or 46, around then. They established the Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance Company, mutual insurance company, and it just grew. And it continues to grow, and we're very thankful for that, because that insurance company, that's where we do get to be the voice. That's where you see the brand when you walk into Rupp Arena, or you walk into a sporting event at the University of Louisville, or you see the commercials on television around being big on commitment. That is big on commitment for insurance, but I think we're one family within Kentucky Farm Bureau, and it is that insurance company that gives us the ability to really be able to market what we do on a state and national level. And it's what gives us our strength in terms of American Farm Bureau, and because American Farm Bureau is based on your membership, and our insurance company is what drives our membership to this day. So the insurance company certainly gives us our strength, no doubt, but our founding was based on agricultural policy and doing anything and everything we can to help farmers be more profitable in their day-to-day lives.
Yeah,
It is. Yeah, it's so special.
It's great work. I've gotten to sit on my local county farm bureau board and really seen, farmers talking about, here's a challenge that I'm dealing with, and everyone agreeing and working together to develop, here's a recommendation that we have that might make this better. And that moves on to the state level, and that state level of farmers who are on that board decide what matters to them, if they agree, disagree. And that's how policies are developed. Really, when you say grassroots, that's what it is. It's in those little county farm bureau meetings with volunteer leaders who come to be a voice for Kentucky agriculture. So it's awesome to be a part of.
And well, thank you for that, Sheldon. And it is, Farm Bureau, we still do everything in person, like our meetings. We're able to have debates amongst each other, and not every farmer agrees. What works in Fleming County might not work in Owen County. But the farmers get to be together to discuss how they believe is the best route forward on policy. And I think being in those rooms at the county level, at the district level, and at the state level, and to be able to discuss and still have the decorum of being able to agree to disagree and to move forward And those people on the resolutions committee that get to vote on these issues, they're all elected by their county farm bureaus within their district. So they are held accountable. But I do think I often talk when I talk to young people, like you can't believe everything you see on Twitter or X or whatever it is. It's so easy to make a point in a one paragraph sentence for or against something. But when you look at policy in a larger scale, we always say that the devil is in the detail. And one good idea, and here's an issue. It'll come up next session. It's been here for 3 years now. It's allowing foreign countries to purchase farmland. Several states are starting to outlaw countries like China, Russia, some of our largest adversaries from purchasing farmland in that particular state. So on the surface, sounds great. It sounds great. But when you look at the reality of it, and when Arkansas did it, they passed that bill. Well, Syngenta is one of the largest ag companies in the world, and they are now majority owned by a bank out of China. So Arkansas had a research farm that was an economic development hub. It was their research and development was around crops important to Arkansas. When they passed that legislation, they said, you're kicked out of the state. That company was not allowed to own farmland there. And so they made a massive multi-million-dollar investment into North Carolina, which is where they're going to go with one of their facilities. I would love to see them come to Kentucky. But legislation like that, which has not passed in Kentucky yet, it's been proposed a couple of years. It'll be here next year. Again, it's making sure that when you pass something like that, it doesn't have adverse effects down the line. Another example, Smithfield Foods employs probably 1,000 people in Carter County. It's the largest pork processor in the United States of America. They have ownership from a institution in China. They're American run, but have some ownership shares from China. Do we want to kick out 1,000-person employer that's processing a raw agricultural commodity
In
just because of
Eastern
one of their
Kentucky with
investors?
limited jobs. Yeah.
Right. So it's, we understand, like, again, the first thing I mentioned was the importance of protecting farmland for Kentucky farmers. That is our priority. And we're taking a very serious and strict look into who is purchasing farmland. But you can't take a quick reaction that's going to have long-term impacts. And around the foreign country, I could tweet that we're going to ban China from buying farmland, and everyone's going to like that. Everyone's going to love that. But if it means we're going to lose 1,000 jobs in an agricultural based processor, then not everyone's going to like it. But they don't see that down the line. And I think that's why it's important to show up to public events, community events where you can have discussion and ask questions. It's hard to do that in a tweet or a social media. Social media plays an important part in today's policy process, and it can be used for good. It is used for good. I just encourage everyone listening, like, don't just see one thing tweeted by an elected official or a candidate and think that's the greatest idea ever. Maybe be willing to ask that question. Like, that seems like such a good idea. Why has it not happened? What is any potential adverse effect to that? Be willing to ask those questions. I think that's important.
That's great, Kyle. That's so good. And I think that our students and all of us are living in a time that everything is so polarizing. The news is so fast. People have hot takes and hot opinions, but it really is in the details, and there's nuance to all those decisions. And it takes more time and more thought and more curiosity to be a person who's like, I'm gonna dig more. I'm gonna see. I'm not sure. It's sometimes easy to make a snap judgment.
Right.
So you have to challenge yourself to go deeper.
Yeah. And I think, like, I don't think this, I know this because they've told me this, like, our elected officials in Washington, D.C. and in Frankfurt, like, they want to hear from their constituents. That's why Kentucky Farm Bureau, in my opinion, has the strength we do. It's not because of me. It's definitely not because of me. It's because they have constituents that vote for them that are telling them this is what's important to me and willing to ask the question. If you, most of the time, like, it doesn't have to be passed today. Like, if you've got a question about something, if you're curious about something in the legislative process, reach out and ask. And most of the time, these elected officials are going, them or their staff will get you an answer because they work for you. They work for their constituents and they want to hear from you. That was, I guess, where I was getting started with that is they tell me like, well, I've not heard from my local farm bureau on that. So if it's important to you as an individual or as a local organization, don't hesitate to reach out and let them know, hey, this is important to me. I'm not sure if I'm for it or against it. Can you explain it more?
That's the perfect segue into our last question around this topic. But if there are people who want to be more involved in developing policy and advocating for things that are important to them, where do you get started if you're like, how do I contact my legislator? And when I call them, like, what do I say? I think it's important to note that like posting your grievance on social media isn't always like the best way to do it, or, they might not even get that. So
Yeah.
how do you get involved? Where do you start?
Yeah. So the local farm bureau is a great way. Like if you know someone on a local board, being involved locally is a great way to get information. If you're a farm bureau member, you can reach out to me and we can add you to email lists where we give weekly updates during session, and we have contact lists. It's just their generic kylegislature.com emails, but they check those. But it's basically being involved locally to be put in email or text groups. I know we all get dozens or hundreds of unwanted emails, but these are ones worth getting, whether it's us or the local chamber or whatever you're passionate about locally, and getting put on email list that says what is going on, but also just has those phone numbers and email contacts of those elected officials.
Yeah.
That's a great call out. And I think something we could include in our show notes too for this podcast. So if you're listening and you want to do it, check out the show notes and you can get added to that list.
Yeah.
This has been such a great conversation about so many things, and I know I've enjoyed it. I know our listeners will too, and probably will be one that they re-listen to because there's been so many good nuggets that you've shared, Kyle. In 2025, we're changing the pace of this podcast a little bit and changing up our 3 questions we ask our guests at the end. So you're going to be one of our first that we ask these 2, so we're excited. But this is really just about you personally, and we talk a lot about leadership on this podcast. So share with us, what motivates you as a leader? What keeps you motivated?
Hearing from the people that I feel like I'm working on behalf of. I think, the reason that I love serving on the FFA Foundation board is because FFA students, they always write thank you notes, and you might not think those matter, but they do. Like seeing those thank you notes, hearing from those students at state convention or at local community events, and hearing the impact that what we do has on them motivates me as a leader. I think within Farm Bureau, it's our membership when they share the story that they were able to save X amount of money on purchasing a farm because of a tax credit that we got passed, or we got a sales tax exemption for animal pharmaceuticals 3 years ago. Hearing farmers say that saved me 6% on $50,000 worth of animal medicine, that's a big deal. That goes back to their pocket for them to spend at Christmas on their children. For me, like what motivates me is hearing those success stories. And ultimately, like Sheldon mentioned earlier, we are in the business of relationships. And it's like, I work on behalf of our Farm Bureau members. So like I'm paid to do what I do, but those members become like family. Like we call it the Farm Bureau family, the FFA family. Hearing from the people where we're in leadership positions to try to help them when you hear from them, when you stay in constant communication with them, they're my best friends, they're family, and that's what motivates me because they are busy doing what they need to do on their daily jobs, whether it's full-time farming or whatever it might be. And I'm here to try to help them. So hearing from them is what really motivates me.
Oh, That's great, Kyle. It is all about relationships, and it is really grateful that we have so many great people that we get to work with, and a lot of the same folks, and we're just really blessed to be surrounded by such good people.
Yeah.
So our next question is about philanthropy. Philanthropy is all about giving back, time, talent, treasure, so many ways you could be engaged in philanthropy. What is one of the most meaningful ways you have personally gotten to participate in philanthropy that means the most to you?
Sheldon, I'm glad you mentioned like it's not just money, like it is, it's time. When I had the opportunity to first come on the FFA Foundation board, I was young. I didn't
Yeah.
have money. I just came off working a campaign where I made $1,000 a month. So for those of you at home, that's $12,000 a year. That is below the minimum wage, but
And you worked an extreme amount of hours.
an extreme amount of hours. Yeah, we were working 60 and 80-hour weeks and put almost 70,000 miles on a vehicle, hit all 120 counties. But I didn't have any money to give, but that didn't stop you and the board from seeing that I had something that I could give, which was, one was my time, but it was also those relationships that we go back to. And I think the most important thing that I've been able to give is just connect people who wanted to be involved. Sheldon and our one of our best friends to all three of us and to the FFA community, Nick Carter, just a great man, a great friend, wanted to be involved but didn't really know how. And I'm just happy that I was able to put him in touch with you, Sheldon, and you've done the rest. And Nick's done incredible things for FFA. But I think the best thing I've been able to give is my relationships. Now I am at a point where I can buy an auction item at the gala or something, and that's fun to do. And I enjoy doing that every year, but I will never be able to give the amount of money that some of the people that I've been able to connect to the FFA Foundation with. And that's philanthropy in general. Like, just because you might not have the money to give, I don't think you can't make a difference. You can connect people that are just as passionate as you are. You can help stuff envelopes. You can help set up for the events. You always have a place to go and a thing to do if you're passionate about that issue.
That's right. That spirit of giving moves us all forward. And we're so grateful for your time on the board. We've came a long way since you started and where we are now. We've grown together, and I'm grateful for that. I also want to shout out that you work for Kentucky Farm Bureau, who is a great corporate partner to Kentucky FFA. Your company supports us in many ways because we have shared values and vision. We're both growing Kentucky agriculture, and so you help move FFA forward in your personal, professional life, and you're a great advocate for us in a lot of places. So thank you, Kyle.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And our last question is kind of an off the wall one, but I love it. And it's just, what's something you can't stop talking about right now?
Yeah. So, well, right now, Kentucky basketball.
Good
So
pick.
we're all happy again. We just had a legislative reception, and it was at the Central Bank Center, and everyone was happy to be there again and cheer on the Cats. So I'm a UK graduate. Sheldon, I know you're a Western. I love Western too because they've got an Owen County kid. He's actually a medical redshirt this year, but
Okay.
I cheer for the Hilltoppers too because of Tegan.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
but yeah, I'm a big sports guy. So right now I'm pretty excited about the Cats. Obviously, they're going to have some moments, but they have been fun to watch, and just seeing the new energy. It's always exciting whenever change is always questionable, and everything you do, you wonder, should we do it? Should we change? But it's exciting to embrace it and cheer on these new Wildcats.
That's great. Yeah. I'm a Western grad, but a Wildcat fan too. You can be both of those things. I got to take my boys to a game last week, and the energy around UK basketball, I just don't know why anybody wouldn't want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
It's so great. So, well, Kyle, thank you for joining us, and thanks for all the ways that you support Kentucky FFA. I hope our listeners take advantage, sign up for your email. We'll have that in the show notes if you want to get on your mailing list. And there's so many ways you can hear from Kyle. Kyle, shout out your podcast in case they want more information. How do they stay in touch?
Yeah, so we started last year, the Farm to Frankfurt. It is a YouTube series, but it's also made into one of our podcasts. I think it's Kentucky Farm Life, I believe is the overall name. And then there's about 3 or 4 different podcasts within it that we do here internally at Farm Bureau. But if you're interested in policy in particular, podcast and YouTube, Farm to Frankfurt is the name of that one. Sheldon, thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, perfect. Kyle, thank you for joining us. And everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of Growing Kentucky's Leaders. Growing Kentucky's Leaders is a podcast brought to you by the Kentucky FFA Foundation. Our music is performed by Bourbon County FFA member Joe Fritch. Artwork is by Julie Fritch Creative. Your hosts are Sheldon McKinney and Ruth Ann Fink, and you can find us on all social platforms at Kentucky FFA.